Hi guys, James here. Today in this video I'm going to show you how to hang an internal door. Whether it's an internal door or an external door, it really goes through the same process. Now, what you'll see in the video is an existing door jamb that I've hung. It doesn't have any hinges, it doesn't have any door hardware on there. We've got a blank door. So I'll talk you through the process of putting the hinges on and how to fit the hardware. To start with the door, you need a couple of levels. I like a short level to be able to check the head or the top of the door, and a longer level to be able to check down the side. Hinges, I use 100mm butt hinges here. I use 3 of those. You need some drill bits for some of the locks and the hinges, potentially an impact driver and a drill, an electric plane just for shaving the door down, some speed bore bits or some spade bits for the lock, potentially a hole saw depending on what type of lock or handle you have, some chisels and a hammer. I've got a sharpening stone here as well too. I'm just going to give those chisels a little bit of a touch up before we start. The other thing is the door. You'll need to check the size of your door, check your opening, and get a door that's closest to that width. I've got an 820mm door that I'm using here. Remove any packers or blocks that you might have in your door and take it over and see if you can get the door to fit in the opening as it is. Okay, like I said, I'm pretty lucky because I did fit this door jamb originally, and when you've got an 820 door, I like to have 3mm clearance all the way around. So 2 sides, the top, and a little bit more on the bottom, probably closer to 10mm just to clear the carpet. Now that fits in nicely now. I just need to lift it up with a couple of chisels to check the height. And this way you can check when you put the door in. What I like to do is pull it tight over to the hinge side and then slide it up tight up there. So that way you can see if anything needs to be shaved off down the hinge side or if anything needs to be shaved off the top just to get it all nice and plumb and parallel to the jamb. So here I just take a couple of chisels, put that under the bottom of the door and use that as a lever. Once you've got that levered up tight, get a couple of packers and just sit that under there and then move it across tight. Okay, so now I've got my timber wedge under there. This is what I was saying, some of these assorted plastic shims or plastic packers come in handy. Okay, now that I've got the packer under the bottom, pull it across to the hinge side tight. I'll do that just by slipping in a couple of packers at the top and levering it over at the bottom. It's pretty plumb. What you can do is, by having the door up tight, sometimes you'll see if the jamb runs out. If you've got it tight in the corner here and you've got a 3 or a 4mm gap over this side, you know you need to transfer the mark over here 3 or 4mm and shave that much off so the head's parallel. That's so long as the side on here where it's hinged is also nice and tight. What you can find is when you put this on, sometimes the jamb will have a belly out or a belly in, and you may need to either shave the top off or the bottom off the door, or even take some out of the middle just to get that tight over where the hinges are going to go. If in your example you're fitting this into an existing opening, and say you were tight over here and you only had 1mm clearance here, well, you know you'd have to take off another 5mm at the top here. So let's say you had 6mm clearance at the bottom and only 1, well then you're going from nothing up to sort of 5mm. That's how you'd be shaving the door off, just to make sure you've got that even gap or the even consistency all the way around. Okay, now that I know it's going to fit, next thing is put the hinges on. Now the easiest way to hinge your door is to take a bit of 70 by 35 or 45 pine and take a little notch out here, just big enough for the door to get in, and then on the very end you just cut a little wedge off. So a little bit of clearance, then you just slide your wedge in beside the door. Give it a little tap with a hammer to make sure it's nice. Okay, so we've got our 3 hinges. Now what I probably should have said before when the door was up is just mark, obviously, the top of the door, and then mark the face, which is the inside, which is going to be swinging in. So for me here, this is the inside face. Now the reason you want to know which is the inside face is because when it comes time to fitting these hinges, if I was to put the knuckle on that side there and then I stand the door up, I realise I've actually got that fitted on the incorrect side and it won't hinge in. This knuckle will need to sit there on the inside of the face, so it would allow the door then to open in off the jamb. So knowing which side your hinges go on is important. Starting off, I like to come down either 100 or 150mm from the top and bottom to make that the start of your hinge. So let's go 150, and then I'll do the same at the bottom. Then it's just a matter of splitting the difference on the door. The door's 2040 long, half of that will be 1.20 m, and that's the center. Our hinge is 100 overall, so we can just mark up 50mm and make that the top. That means our hinge is going to sit there. So the trick with this is making sure you get the hinge in the right spot on the door this way. Now how do we know we're getting the right spot? And it's probably easy if I flip that over to show you. It's either the line on the back of the hinge here or the line on the back of the hinge there. Now what I like to do is just line up, for me, the back of this hinge here with the back of the door. Put a bit of pressure on it and then you can trace. And that's it. Now the trick here to hanging a door is really to make sure you've got really sharp chisels. Otherwise you're going to take bits of timber out of the jamb, it's going to split, it's going to look untidy. If you want a nice neat finish, with WD-40, I'm just going to give them a little bit of a touch up, make sure they're nice and sharp. Now we're going to start chiseling. Okay, now when you do this, to make sure that you stay on the line, always point the flat part towards the line when you work all the way around. Also, when you do your first strike here, what I like to do is just keep it back about 1 millimeter or 0.5 millimeter back from the edge, so that when you punch it down, give it a firm hit. What that does is it pushes it over and you'll see that it ends up being right on the line. Now this is the side where you really need to be careful when you work down along here. You only want to be doing light taps down this side here, only because you can split away the edge of the door quite easily. Really just picking up the line here so that when we come back through, we can tidy that edge up. So you can see they're not as deep as what we've gone at the top and bottom. And then the next trick is to actually come back along and start working it again. You'll see the way I've got the chisel faced here, I've got the flat part down and the round out. I come back along and I do a series of hits and notches like this. You don't want to go too deep first time around because you can always come back and tidy it up. It's just a matter of running the chisel back along the top. And now I just like to go to the top of that and just try and get out those grooves. And if your chisel's sharp enough, you can just clean it up by hand. Once you think you got it reasonably flat, grab your hinge, put it on, and you can just check it. Now when you put your screws in, it will pull it down a little bit tighter, but this has still got 1 mil or so to go. And it also needs to come back a fraction this way so I can tidy up this side as well. Again, just by hand, run your chisel over there. So now that should really just screw into position and we're good to go. Okay, so now that they're chiseled out, it's time to fit these hinges to the door. My impact driver, line it up in the center of the hole. We'll use this as a template for our jamb. Now, the next step is to transfer these marks down the hinge and we can hinge out the jamb. Once this hinge leaf's folded out, then it'll basically be going inside on the door jamb here. So, because we came down 150 millimeters from the top of the door to the top of this hinge, we just need to come down 153 millimeters here to start the top of our hinge. And that'll give us our 3 mil clearance at the top of the door. Now that we've got the mark for that top hinge on the jamb, we need to transfer all these marks over to the jamb so that we can hinge them out and get them to match up. What I like to do is just measure down from the top hinge to the measurement of the top of the middle hinge, and likewise all the way down to the bottom one. It's simply a matter of measuring from the top mark here, middle and bottom, transfer those across, and then we'll use that spare hinge as a template, and then we'll start chiseling these ones out the same way we did the door. I just get a nail, then you got something to hook your tape over when you measure down. Now we just take the hinge, we're doing the exact same process as what we did on the door to transfer that mark over to the jamb. Again, to get this right in or out this way on the jamb, it's important to keep this little side of the hinge, top and bottom, in line with the side of the door jamb here. Okay, so now all three are chiseled out. Screw the third hinge back on the middle of the door, and we'll bring it over and line it up. Might put a couple of packers underneath the door just to get it right, and then we'll screw it off into position. Alright, so what I like to do is open the leaves out 90 degrees all the way around, then bring the door across and just sit it on the ground. So I'll just now put a little timber packer underneath the bottom to lift that up. And you want to do the same thing on the other side of the door and come back to the top, get that side right, put a screw in it. You can lever it up or down with your chisel if need be. Then if we've done this right, hopefully that should just squeeze in. Okay, door's hinged and works well. Now it's time for the lock. Okay, now for the door lock, I'm going to use what's called a standard passage set. Okay, so what you'll need is your two handles, front and back. And what these also come with are a standard latch, and then you've got your little bolt that goes through to join it all up. That's the latch, the striker plate which goes up against the door jamb. Inside these, most of these you get the instructions, which will tell you what size drill bits to use and what back set, which is the distance to drill through the door. Now this one, like most other locks, has a standard 60mm back set on the door. Okay, so to fit this lock, you need a 54mm hole saw, and you also need a 25mm speed bore as well. Okay, so first step is to come up and mark the desired height of your handle. Some people will line them up with a fitting on the door, but I like to put mine just standard at 1 metre high. Once you've marked your metre mark, then take a combination square, mark that around all sides of the door. It's important that's nice and square so that we get a precision hole when we put it through. Next, we want to mark the back set. And the back set is basically the distance from the front of the door here to where the centre of our latch is. For this example, it's 60mm. Mark that on both sides of the door. And then we want to mark the centre of the door here. Next, we take our 25mm speed bore. Make sure that if there's any fixtures on the door that it won't pop out if you drill too deep. So I don't want to go past there, so I want to leave about 1 inch. The whole idea is that this will slide in. It's also very important that you have this nice and straight. You don't want to be too far up or too far down or too far off to the side, otherwise it could pop out the side of the door. Alright, then we line up our drill with that centre mark for the 60mm back set. And come back around. Next step is to take this tubular latch, clear any dust out, and then get this nice and square on the door and then trace around it. That's what we're going to chisel out for this face so it sits flush with the door. Once it's chiseled out, let's pop the screws into the face of the front of the strike. The next step is to dismantle these levers. So on the face here, normally those little covers just pop off. What that allows you to get access to where these screw holes are. What these also have on them is at the bottom there's a little grub screw. They come with this Allen key. Loosen those off to then be able to get this rod. So loosen those now. That's looking better. It goes all the way in there now. Do the same on the other side. A lot of these screws that come standard may have to be cut down in size, only because some doors are wider than others. So we'll measure this up, see what we need, and then we'll probably have to just grind these off or hacksaw these to length. We've got your two holes here, one here and one there. That's where those screws we're going to cut down will go through. Slide one in through the back. Actually, we might be in luck. These actually might just be long enough, these ones. The part's getting these screws in and getting them lined up. Once you get them lined up and you feel it engaging on the other side, so it's in through here and it's got a hole through here that it needs to catch, then we can nip it up. It's good. Now we'll do the same for the one at the back. Got it. Nice. Now we can just tighten them up a little bit more. Tighten those grub screws back on the bottom of the handles just so they latch on. Then we can just slide and pop our cover plates back over. One handle done. now all we need to do is put the striker plate on the rebate side of the door. With the door in the shut position, the center line that you marked on the door, just transfer that across over to your door jamb, and then transfer this mark across with your square. That center line will be the center of our latch. And the next step is to mark out where this goes on the door. Chisel that out. Put a speed bore in through the center here so the latch has got something to drop into. Tricky thing that you often need to work out is where this latch is going to sit on the jamb. Now I'll show you that on the door, how to work that out. When the door engages on this strike, it's going to be sitting like that. That tongue's going to be up against the back there. And so this distance here, I'm going to hold that tight, you can even mark it on the door, is how far off you'll need to be off the jamb. About 3 millimeters. So now I'll transfer that over the jamb. So we had 3 millimeters off the edge of the door. So if the door is sitting hard against this, we should really be coming back 3 millimeters. I like to give it a little extra millimeter or so, just so it's got some clearance. So I'm going to mark 4 mil there. We'll take our strike, reversed around, put it in the center position, and then we can just mark around it. Then we take our 25 mil speed bore. I don't go too deep, I only go about 15 mil. This door jamb material is probably only about 20, so if you go too deep you'll just bust a big hole through the back of it. Doesn't really matter if you do. Then the next step is to then just chisel out for this so it sits down flush on the jamb. It's nice and solid. And you don't want to rattle. If there's a rattle, it means the strike's too far out. If the latch doesn't quite catch and you can pull the door open, it's sitting too far in towards the jamb. So there's a little bit of adjustment. You can sort of play around with that strike just to get it right. But this one, perfect. Okay, so there you have it guys. One door hung, hinged, and a passage lock put on. So hopefully you guys have got a lot out of this video, and I've given you enough information so you can get out there and tackle it yourself. If you've liked the video, give it a thumbs up, like or subscribe. And as always, if there's any tips or tricks that you guys would like to see me do, if you think the video is too long, too short, anything I missed out or any more detail, just put it in the comment section below. I always like to try and improve and maybe add it to the next video. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Catch you next time.